Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. The story begins as a peaceful city is attacked by a monster known as a kaiju. The emergency kaiju alert sounds throughout the city, and people are directed to designated safety areas. This thing is huge and it causes massive destruction while roaming the city, so a defense force arrives and opens fire on it. This isn't humanity's first time being attacked, so some people watching the scene eagerly wait to see which division of the defense force will arrive. It's the 3rd division, and they swiftly move in to deal some damage to the kaiju. One girl from the division carries a large cannon and uses this weapon's immense power to put a hole right through the kaiju, ending its life as she watches. Afterwards, our protagonist named Kafka is amazed at how huge the monster was. Its body parts are scattered everywhere, so he tells the others in his group that they will surely have to work overtime for a while. Nearby, citizens cheer the 3rd division for completing their mission with no casualties. Kafka arrives in awe of the crowd that has gathered, and while the heroes walk away from the defeated monster, Kafka walks towards it. This is because his job begins after the battle is over. Him and the group he is in does the job that no one cares about and no one is grateful for. They are in charge of taking the defeated kaijus apart and getting rid of them. Kafka does just that and deposits a sample of the monster in some drone. Their job is not as glamorous as fighting the beast, but it's definitely a different kind of battle in its own right. This is perfectly demonstrated when Kafka notices someone hoisting something they should not be, and it explodes, causing someone to get hurt. Luckily, Kafka has had injuries just like it before, so he handles the situation. These guys have a ton of work ahead of them, and Kafka laments how the bosses want them to clean up the gigantic mess in just 1 week. Just then, Kafka is told that he will be going to a different area, as they are short-staffed, and he is shocked to hear that he will be going to the intestines. Kafka is dragged away, so the others discuss just how bad the intestines are. Kafka arrives at the intestines and instantly loses his appetite. He is a hard worker though, so Kafka pushes through his discomfort to get the job done. That night, Kafka arrives home exhausted, and he does his best to get rid of the smell from work. A news report comes on about Division 3 and their captain named Mina. At just 27 years old, she has not just become the captain, she has managed to slay hundreds of kaiju. A look back shows that she and Kafka were friends, and she was emotional when they promised to eliminate kaiju together. Mina is incredibly popular and famous now, so there are talks of her becoming a candidate for commander of the defense force. Kafka wonders how he ended up on the opposite side of things, but the thought is too depressing, so he tries not to think about it. He reminds himself that cleaning is also an important job that helps people. On top of that, he's able to eat the foods he likes, and has an apartment that he is content with. Kafka thinks that this should be enough, and just goes to sleep. The next morning, Kafka arrives at work, where he is introduced to the part-time student that will be working with them from now on. His name is Ichikawa, and he is determined to join the defense force. Kafka's co-worker points out that Kafka had the same dream he has, but he eventually just gave up and became a veteran at the cleaning company. Ichikawa wonders why he gave up, so Kafka concedes that he realized that his abilities are limited. He tried hard, but there's always someone better. Kafka tries to have a positive attitude about it, but Ichikawa is completely serious. He declares that he will never give up for any reason, so he can't understand Kafka's logic. He doesn't want to understand either, so he just goes to get changed. Everyone thought that they would get along because of their shared dream, but Kafka is furious since he knows that there was no way to answer the kid's question without looking miserable. Kafka is forced to do some reflection, and he wonders if quitting is really that bad. They all head to work and go over the plan for the day. They decide which parts need to be preserved for research and which parts simply need to be destroyed. Ichikawa is assigned to the intestines. Kafka is glad because of the kid's attitude, but he finds that he will be assigned to intestines as well for the 2nd day in a row. He is told that it's because he's good at dealing with intestines, so Kafka vows to show everyone what he's made of. The boss points out how Kafka complains a lot, but acknowledges that he is a diligent worker. If he had passed the exam, he would have been a good defense force officer. Afterwards, Kafka is happy to see that Ichikawa was grossed out by the intestines experience, but he had it just as bad as he must keep himself from puking. Just then, Kafka notices that the kid didn't bring much to eat. Ichikawa rudely tells him that he doesn't have much of an appetite, but Kafka gives him a vitamin drink. He insists that Ichikawa eat and drink as much as he can, or else he won't be able to make it through the workday. Kafka also offers him some nose plugs. Ichikawa refuses them, but Kafka insists that it will help. At the end of the workday, everyone gets cleaned off, and one group leaves first. Kafka is glad to see that the worst part of the cleanup process should be over now. Ichikawa arrives, so Kafka thinks he wants a rematch from their little wrestling match, but Ichikawa surprisingly thanks him for his help getting through the day. Before he leaves, Ichikawa points out that the Defense Force has changed their age limit to join. It is now 33 years old. Ichikawa knows that it's none of his business, but he could tell that Kafka looked sad when he talked about the Defense Force earlier. Ichikawa tells him that he can just quit if he wants though, but Kafka thanks him and states that Ichikawa is a better person than he thought. Ichikawa tries to keep his edgy persona, so he reminds Kafka that he doesn't actually care, but just then a monster appears to attack him. Kafka rescues him just in time, but he's in bad shape. Ichikawa is shocked by what he calls a yoju, and Kafka must rescue him from being eliminated once again. Kafka tells him to run and get help, but he refuses to leave Kafka. Kafka reminds Ichikawa that he's supposed to join the Defense Force, but he won't be able to if he dies now. Kafka once again demands that Ichikawa leave, so he does. Kafka gets the terrifying monster to chase him through the streets, and just barely manages to dodge its attacks. He then gets away for a moment by running into a narrow building, and runs through a pane of glass. Another look back shows that Kafka and Mina both lost their schools and their homes. Kafka hated the kaiju, but only because they kept him from finishing his Pokemon game. Mina was disappointed to hear that this was all he cared about, but Kafka was just keeping a positive attitude. As for Mina though, she was sad because a cat named Miko died. They became serious as they stared at all the damage done by the kaiju, and they simultaneously declared that they will join the Defense Force. The two insult each other for this crazy idea since they are both so young, but they eventually decide to have a competition to see who can become the coolest officer. Kafka was sure that they could do it, and declared that they will eliminate all the kaiju together. Back to the present, Kafka realizes that things should not have ended up this way. He must continue running though, as the monster's just smashing through buildings to get to him. Kafka decides to make a stand against the monster, and determines that he must attack its legs. Unfortunately, he doesn't stand a chance, as the monster instantly attacks him, and Kafka wonders why things ended up this way. Kafka screams in agony as the monster stomps on him, and he can no longer move as his leg is broken. Kafka loses all hope as the monster's just about to consume him, but Ichikawa appears to rescue him just in time. Kafka calls him an idiot, but Ichikawa explains that he already notified the Defense Force. Kafka meant that he was an idiot for coming back at all, but Ichikawa points out that if he abandoned Kafka, he would never be able to become a Defense Force officer. Just then, Kafka has flashbacks to when he received the Defense Force rejection letter, and his dreams were crushed. He curses himself for being so useless, as Ichikawa gets thrashed around by the monster. Kafka is furious since he hasn't changed at all. He wasn't able to protect his friend's cat, and now he can't even protect the new kid at work. Kafka's frustration causes him to scream out with rage, just as Ichikawa is about to be eliminated by the beast. However, just then, the monster is absolutely blown to pieces, leaving the two guys shocked. A female voice declares that the target has been eliminated, and Kafka is shocked to see that Mina has arrived with the other members of the 3rd Division. She has some of her crew take care of the injured, while her and the rest go check for more yoju. Kafka is checked on, but he's in really bad shape and unresponsive. That night at the Yokohama hospital, Kafka marvels at how amazing Mina has become. She was able to eliminate such a terrifying monster in an instant, so Kafka determines that she has gone to a place that he can never reach. Kafka thought that he was alone, but he is shocked when he learns that Ichikawa is right next to him. Ichikawa points out that if Kafka didn't rescue him and tell him to run away, he would be dead right now. Kafka is then shocked when Ichikawa says that he is cool, and Kafka thinks about his competition with Mina to become the coolest officer. Ichikawa thinks that Kafka should be an officer, but once again declares that it's up to him. Kafka punches himself, finally snapping out of his negative mindset, as he wonders how long he was intending to turn a blind eye. He thanks Ichikawa and tells the kid that he really is a good person. Kafka still doesn't think that giving up is a bad thing, but it's definitely not good to deceive himself. He then confidently declares that he will once again aim to become a Defense Force officer. His heroic declaration is interrupted though, when he's shocked to find a monster hovering above him. This thing says that it has found him, and it shoves itself into Kafka's mouth. Ichikawa wonders if he is okay, but he's clearly not as he gasps for air and thrashes about. Ichikawa checks on him, but he is shocked to find a monster in Kafka's bed. Kafka casually looks at Ichikawa and then casually looks at his reflection. The shock eventually hits them, so Kafka tries to tell Ichikawa to calm down and that it's him. Ichikawa calms down, but some old guy arrives to call the defense force. The guys freak out as they think about what the defense force does to kaiju, so the guys panic as Ichikawa tells Kafka to run. Another look back shows Kafka telling Mina how to immobilize kaiju. She took notes as he told her that she needed to attack the legs and tie it up. Mina was scared by the thought of fighting a monster, so Kafka assured her that when the time comes, he will be by her side. Back to the present, Mina thinks about how that was a lie. Just then, Mina is informed that a kaiju was spotted at the Yokohama hospital, and she declares that she will handle it. She will dispatch along with her officers, and they will eliminate the kaiju. Another look back shows that Mina made fun of Kafka for saying that he would be right by her side when she got scared. Kafka was completely embarrassed, so he told her not to tell anyone he said that. Mina was actually really grateful, so she thanked him and agreed that there's nothing to be afraid of as long as they are together. Back to the present, Mina has assembled her division, and they prepare to head to the hospital to eliminate the kaiju that appeared there. An alarm sounds around the entire city, telling people to take shelter from the kaiju. At the hospital, the guys panic as the old man is terrified of Kafka. Ichikawa thinks they can clear up the misunderstanding if Kafka just smiles, but Kafka's smile is horrifying. It clearly doesn't work as the old man passes out. Kafka rushes to help him, but he shocks himself with his own strength as he destroys the area with the slightest touch. Kafka can't believe that he did all that, and others notice that a kaiju is there. Ichikawa is sure that the defense force is on their way, so they agree to leave. Kafka goes to escape out the window, but once again shocks himself when the slightest touch destroys an entire wall. Kafka wonders what's going on with his body, but there's no time to think as people are beginning to panic. The two guys jump out the window, but Kafka launches himself much farther than he expected. Ichikawa tries to make sense of what's going on, but he begins to wonder if this kaiju is really Kafka. He asks Kafka if he is really him, but Kafka isn't even sure anymore as his body's going out of control. Ichikawa wonders if this transformation is a special mode of his, but Kafka has no clue. Just then, the parasite extends out of his mouth to eat a bird alive. Luckily, Kafka reverts back, but he reveals that there is trouble. Ichikawa wonders what kind of terrifying thing awaits them next, but Kafka just says that he needs to pee. Ichikawa just tells him to hold it, but he can't, and Kafka shames himself for being an adult that can't hold it in. Ichikawa points out that Kafka doesn't even seem to have the right parts to pee, and he wonders where it will even come out of. Kafka then shocks them both when he pees out of his nipples. Kafka is even more ashamed now, but Ichikawa reminds him that they have more important things to worry about. Kafka wonders if he can still join the defense force the way he is now, but Ichikawa points out that he is what the defense force eliminates. They probably won't let him join, and instead they will just destroy him. Kafka gets serious as this fact starts to sink in. The timing couldn't be worse either, as he just decided to try and catch up with Mina. They prepare to enter a restricted area where no one will be around, but Kafka senses something approaching. It's not the defense force though, since it's coming from underground. An explosion occurs elsewhere in the city, and the defense force receives a report that another kaiju has appeared. Kafka is able to tell that it's the same type that attacked them before. Ichikawa points out that they already sounded the alarms because of Kafka, so he hopes that there won't be any casualties. This kaiju will keep the defense force busy, so it's the perfect time for them to hide. Elsewhere, a girl sobs as her mother is trapped, and they are found by the kaiju. The mother begs her daughter to run away, but it's too late as the kaiju is about to consume her. However, just then, Kafka arrives to hit the kaiju with an incredibly powerful punch. Kafka shocks himself once again with how powerful he is, and he goes to check on the girl. Of course, she is scared of him, so Kafka reminds himself to smile, but this just makes it worse. He rescues the unconscious mother, so Ichikawa explains that she will be fine. The kaiju returns, so Kafka tells them to get out of there. Ichikawa wonders what he's planning to do, so Kafka reveals that he's going to try punching the kaiju as hard as he can. Kafka begins a countdown as his body bursts with power, and he unleashes the powerful punch. This strike absolutely destroys the monster, sending its parts flying everywhere, and its blood rains down from the sky. Kafka still can't believe how insanely strong he is, and Ichikawa is sure that Kafka can never use that punch on a human. Kafka tells them that they can safely head to the hospital now, but he's more terrifying than ever. He tells the girl not to worry because the defense force will be there soon, so he is leaving. The girl stops him though and thanks him. This reminds Kafka of when Mina thanked him, and he imagines a future where he is fighting by Mina's side. Ichikawa wants them to run before they are found, but Kafka declares that he isn't giving up after all. Kafka reveals his human face again and states that he must go and stand by Mina's side. The defense force arrives soon after to wonder what in the world just happened to the obliterated kaiju. Mina asks the little girl to tell her everything, but she is terrified just thinking about it. Mina tells her not to worry and promises that she will destroy all the kaiju for her. The girl gets worried for a different reason though, and Mina is shocked when the little girl wants her to promise that she won't hurt the good kaiju. She clarifies by saying it's the one that saved her mom, but Mina can't even comprehend what the little girl just said. 3 months later, a news report reveals that the defense force has given a code name to the unknown kaiju. They have a drawing of it from witness testimony, and they are calling it Kaiju number 8. All Kafka's cleaning company co-workers just assume that the kaiju is probably already dead. Ichikawa arrives at work and thinks about how Kafka became the first kaiju in history to escape the defense force. However, this means that every defense force officer in the country is looking for him now. Just then, their boss explains that Kafka and Ichikawa received something in the mail. The other guys discuss how Kafka would take an exam every year, and they always had to cheer him up after he got the results. Ichikawa checks his letter, and the others congratulate him as he passed the first round of Defense Force selection exams. On his way to give Kafka his letter, Ichikawa can't help himself, so he checks Kafka's results. He sees good news, so he rushes off excitedly. The other guys can see that this means Kafka finally passed. This will be Kafka's last chance to enter the Defense Force, so the guys are happy for him. He is finally getting his opportunity after working so hard for so long. Ichikawa excitedly tells Kafka that he passed the first round of exams, but he becomes furious when Kafka is in his kaiju form. Kafka changes back as he didn't even notice, but he doesn't fully transform. Ichikawa points out that he was just on the news, so he needs to be more careful. We then learn that they returned to the hospital shortly after the whole incident and just lied about everything. Ichikawa thought that Kafka would be more happy about the letter, but Kafka reveals that the second round is where he always fails. Ichikawa wonders if Kafka is really planning to take the next exams with this crazy body of his. Kafka assures him that no one will notice, but he still can't get his transformation right. Ichikawa points out that the first round is just a written test and some paperwork, but there will be officers everywhere during the second. This will be really dangerous, as they will eliminate Kafka on sight if they see he is a kaiju, but Kafka declares that he's taking the exam no matter what. He has been working real hard these past 3 months, and this is his last chance since he is 32 years old. Ichikawa is just as determined, so he says that no matter what happens to Kafka, he's not going to drop out either. They agree that if they're going to do it, then they're going to do it as rivals. Kafka casually goes to drink something, but he has a hard time opening his water bottle. He ends up transforming and destroying it with his immense strength, so Ichikawa takes back everything he said. The two finish arguing, and Ichikawa tells them that the other cleaners will arrive soon. Kafka is actually relieved that he passed the first round, and he declares that it's time for his revenge match against the second round of exams. 10 days later, the guys arrive at the Defense Force's Tachikawa base for the exam. Ichikawa has been to a different base on a field trip before, but this one is much bigger. This one shares the area with the Self-Defense Force garrison, so troops are everywhere. Ichikawa points out how it makes things much more dangerous, since if Kafka transforms there, then he would be eliminated within seconds. Other examinees begin arriving, so Kafka declares that it's time to go. He wants to get checked in even though they are pretty early, but some girl gets his attention by calling him an old man. Kafka points out that he is not old since he's still just 32, but she points out that that is old. She tells him to move his truck, but he states that there are tons of other parking spots. She insists though since her lucky number for the day is 5. Kafka has had enough of the annoying girl, so he declares that he will teach her some manners. Kafka is shocked when she removes her dress to reveal her suit underneath, and she declares that she will just move his vehicle herself. The guys are shocked by her suit, which seems to give her immense power, and she lifts the truck with one hand. They are horrified as she just tosses it aside, and Kafka points out that that is a company vehicle. Ichikawa wonders just who the heck she is, so she reveals that she is examinee number 216. Her name is Kikaru, and her hobby is eliminating kaiju. She tells them to remember her name, and Ichikawa is shocked when he recognizes her last name. Kikaru then turns her attention back to Kafka. She gives him a sniff and points out that he smells just like a kaiju. Ichikawa quickly explains that they are part of the kaiju disposal unit. Kikaru is then shocked when Kafka easily lifts his truck, and she assumes that he must have his own hidden power suit. Kafka introduces himself as examinee number 2032 and dramatically tells the kiddo to remember his name. His cool introduction is interrupted though when he realizes that Kikaru's butler took his parking spot. Kikaru thought the exam would be really boring, but explains that it's getting interesting. She vows to show up Kafka really bad and leaves. Ichikawa is furious with Kafka for already using his powers, but Kafka points out that he was able to only transform the part she couldn't see. They tell some guards that the loud noise was nothing, but Ichikawa tells Kafka that he will send him home if he pulls any more stunts. Kafka knows that this is his last chance to stand by Mina, so he promises himself that he won't give up this time. Moments later though, Kafka struggles really bad during the exam. He has been keeping up with his training, and he does really hard physical work every day, but he just can't keep up right now. A look back to a moment ago shows Ichikawa explaining that the second stage of the exam has two parts, a fitness test and an aptitude test. They can't change their aptitude, which means they have to get the best grades they can in the fitness test. However, Kafka's having a really hard time. He was always pretty below average, but things have gotten way worse. He is really falling behind, so he wonders if people really become this weak after turning 30. Falling behind makes Kafka think about transforming, but that would just be crazy. Unfortunately, Kafka does really poorly and receives a rank of 219 out of 225. Kikaru reveals that she ranked 5th and mocks Kafka as it didn't take long at all to show him up. Kafka thinks about how he dramatically told her to remember his name, but he wants her to forget his name now. Ichikawa is just glad that Kafka didn't use his powers, and Kafka explains that it wouldn't be fair if he did, since everyone worked so hard to get there. Kafka just said that to sound cool though, and he wishes that he did use his powers. Kafka is sure that he would have done better, but Ichikawa thinks that there was another reason why Kafka received the rank he did. Elsewhere, Mina is shown this year's applicants. Her subordinate assumes that she won't care because all she cares about is eliminating kaiju, but he is shocked when she's willing to hear more while she works. The guy explains that a guy named Nozumo has his attention. He graduated at the top of his class, and he's the most promising of this year's group. Ichikawa noticed this guy as well, as he just ranked 2nd. The guy who ranked 3rd is Iharu, the valedictorian of some big university. The guy who ranked 1st though is Kaguragi, the rising star of the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force. Those guys aren't the only ones, as most examinees this year are from top universities. Normally, people like them would be trying to become elite officers, not field agents. This is probably why Kafka ranked so low, and Kafka realizes that this is why they seem so strong. Ichikawa explains that even among all these strong guys, there is one person everyone is watching. She graduated from California Neutralization at age 16. She skipped grades and became the youngest ever to do so. It's Kikaru, and they call her the greatest talent ever. The 3 top guys are watching her and hope they can measure up. Ichikawa points out that it's a group of extremely skilled applicants, none more so than Kikaru. Kafka tells her that he had no idea that she was so amazing, but he gets beaten by her bodyguards for touching her. Everyone watches and they just assume that Kafka is one of her groupies. Kikaru laughs as she showed him up yet again, but Kafka declares that he will show her up too. In reality though, Kafka knows that things aren't going well, but Ichikawa still has hope. For the last 2 years, the second part of the test has been kaiju corpse disposal. They want to test examinees' knowledge of kaiju and their ability to work in a group. They also want to show them that there's more to the job than just eliminating kaiju. This being in the test is why Ichikawa chose to work part-time at the disposal unit. Kafka's hope is restored, so they decide to bet everything on the next part of the exam. They arrive at the second training area, and 3rd Division Vice Captain named Hoshina introduces himself. He explains that he will be in charge of giving them their aptitude test. In this test, they will have to find kaiju. Kafka becomes excited as he thinks that they will have to find them to simply dispose of their bodies, just like Ichikawa said, but he is shocked when Hoshina actually says that they will have to find and neutralize the kaiju. Kafka's then startled when one of these immensely powerful kaiju tries to attack Hoshina, but some security measures stop it. Kafka is still shocked, but all the top guys are clearly eager for this part of the exam. Kikaru laughs at our boy, so Kafka wonders what happened to just disposing of the bodies. Ichikawa explains that that is just what happened the past 2 years, and he's disappointed too. Hoshina explains that this part of the exam is very dangerous, so they will have them do it while wearing Izumo Tech gear. Ichikawa tries it on, and is amazed as it analyzes his body measurements and adjusts its shape specifically for him. The suit becomes one with his body, and Ichikawa can even feel his muscles getting stronger. These are Demon Defense Force combat suits, and it's made from organic material taken from kaiju. It massively multiplies the combat power of its wearer. Elsewhere, Konami, the 3rd Division operator, states that she will start measuring the unleashed combat power of the ones wearing their suits. Ichikawa's combat power is 8%, Izumo is at 18%, Kaguragi is at 15%, and Ihiro is at 14%. Unleashed combat power indicates how much of the suit's power an examinee was able to draw out. Even after tons of training, it's usually around 20%, and they are lucky if they even get just one applicant a year above 10%. These 3 guys are all over 10%, so Hoshina wonders if this year will be something they have never seen before. Just then, everyone is absolutely shocked as Konami sees that Kikaru's unleashed combat power is at 46%. Everyone is in awe of her, and Hoshina thinks about how she's already at the level of a platoon leader. She hasn't even joined the force yet, so they assume that this must be some kind of record. Ichikawa is down on himself for only being at 8%, but Hoshina explains that that's still pretty good for the first time. As long as examinees don't have a 0, they will pass, and Hoshina explains that he has never even seen a 0 before. There's a first time for everything as everyone is shocked once again, but this time it's because Kafka is revealed to have an unleashed combat power of 0%. Everyone laughs at him, and Konami even wonders if there was some kind of error. Kafka tells them to just give him some more time as he's trying to squeeze out the combat power. Hoshina laughs uncontrollably though, as he points out that this isn't like using the bathroom and he can't just squeeze it out. Hoshina is really starting to like Kafka, but he assumes that he won't be able to pass the exam. Kafka figures that there might be some kind of trick to getting a higher percentage and tries hard to figure it out before the exam ends. Kikaru is getting really frustrated with him, and she just wishes that he would show the power he used in the parking lot. Hoshina then enters the room and reveals that it's time to start the final part of the exam. He explains that their targets will be 1 Hanju and 36 Yoju, and they have been placed throughout an urban training area. These kaiju caused 16 casualties in total, and they were captured alive to serve as training aids. Examinees will fight them with anti-kaiju weapons, and drones will monitor their actions. If they sense that an examinee is in danger, they will activate the shield in their suits to save them, but this will also mean that they fail the exam. The exam is extremely dangerous, so Hoshina can't guarantee that they will even survive. They will have to choose if they want to take part, so Hoshina begins the test. The examinees eagerly rush forward, but they are stunned when Kikaru jumps ahead. She quickly and easily takes down 2 Yoju, amazing everyone. Kafka declares that they need to push ahead so they don't fall behind, but Ichikawa points out that Kafka is the one holding them back. Kafka defends himself by pointing out that the weapons are very heavy without the help of the suit. He tries to make it sound cool by saying that only he, the Zero, can understand this, but Ichikawa doesn't think it's cool at all. Things are not looking good as Ichikawa points out that they don't have the offensive power that the others have. Just then, Hoshina reveals that Mina has arrived to watch the exam. Kafka remembers their challenge to see who could become the cooler Defense Force officer, and he calms himself down. He stops caring about being a Zero and reminds himself that this is his last chance. Kafka realizes something and asks Ichikawa why they are being watched by drones. If they just wanted to keep track of how many kaiju examinees eliminated, they could easily do that with sensors. This isn't the case because aside from testing their abilities, what they're also testing is how well they can adapt to the situation. The two of them realize that since they lack the same kind of offensive capability, what they should really be doing is supporting all the attackers the best they can. They find a nearby fight going on, so they get in position to help. Kafka notices the hooves of this Yoju and recognizes it from one of his cleanups. His experience pays off as he remembers that stun grenades are incredibly effective against this Yoju. It has weak eyesight but incredibly good hearing. Once they are deafened, they are easy targets. His expertise doesn't end there, as he tells Uzumo to aim for its stomach because that's its weak spot. The attackers do just that, and they are surprised when they're able to defeat the beast. They thank Kafka for the great support, but Kafka's upset because he called him Kikuru's groupie. In the observation room, they actually take notice of what Kafka and Ichikawa are doing. Kafka points out to Ichikawa that they have taken apart more kaiju bodies than they can count. He becomes confident that they can use this knowledge now, and Kafka's relieved that he doesn't need his kaiju power. He's finally excited that he will be able to make up for all his screw-ups. However, all this optimism ends abruptly when a kaiju appears out of nowhere. This thing sends Kafka flying into a building, and Konami detects that he is severely injured. He won't be able to continue battle, and the Yoju is approaching him, so they prepare his suit shield. Kafka realizes that they will probably use the shield, but he knows that this will mean he fails the exam. He knows that Mina is watching, so Kafka tries to force himself up. He refuses to embarrass himself in front of her anymore, but this beast is about to eat him. Konami begins the activation of the remote shield, and Hoshina thinks about how he knew that Kafka would be the first to drop out. He thinks it's a real shame because Kafka was a pretty funny guy. However, just then, the Yoju gets blown to bits, and Kikuru points out that this is the third time she has shown up Kafka. She declares that while she is on the battlefield, nobody gets to quit. Kafka is amazed by her, but she interrupts him. She declares that she will go on to defeat even more kaiju, so he can just lie on the ground like a loser. The other guys can tell that she's going for the main target, but they refuse to just let her take it from them. Kikuru then easily takes out another Yoju. Ihiru thinks she is just way too powerful, and he wonders if she really has on the same suit they do. Kafka wants to go after the main target as well, but his leg is broken and he can't even stand up. Hoshina explains that Kafka has multiple fractures and possibly even organ damage. Kafka wonders if this means that he will have to give up, but he refuses to let himself think that way. Kafka thinks about how horrible it felt to see that he had 0% combat power, and to think that this meant he could never stand by Mina's side. He becomes frustrated when he thinks about how only those with talent pass. Hoshina recommends that Kafka just drop out, and explains that the suit shields aren't foolproof. Kafka has become defiant though, and thinks about how he is the one who decides if he gives up or not. He declares that even though he is too old for dreams, and even if he looks like an idiot, he has decided to bet his entire life up to this point and chase his dreams again. As Kafka makes this declaration, everyone in the observation room is shocked to see that his combat power has gone up 0.01%. Kafka declares that this time he's not giving up no matter what, and Mina takes notice. Kafka proudly shows that he can still stand, which amazes Konami because his leg is broken. Hoshina decides to let him have his way, but warns that he will activate the shield if things look bad. Kafka tells Ichikawa to go ahead without him, since that is the deal they had, but Ichikawa decides to back him up instead. Kafka realizes that this is just the kind of guy Ichikawa is, so he accepts his help. Hoshina has a good laugh at them though, as Ichikawa carries Kafka. Ichikawa admits that he's really embarrassed, but the two of them are really determined. Kafka's broken bones are hurting him a lot, so Ichikawa will act as their legs, and Kafka will use all his knowledge to handle the attacking. Hoshina just wants to pass the two of them already because they provide amazing comedy relief. Kafka instructs Ichikawa to follow Kikuru, and he is amazed by his friend's speed. Kikuru is busy forcing everyone to eat her dust while she defeats a bunch of kaiju, so Ichikawa tells Kafka to be ready to support her when they catch up to her. All the guys watch as Kikuru does her thing, and they are disappointed that she won't even let them help. Konami announces that Kikuru has eliminated the last Yoju in the area, and is already engaging the Hanju. Kikuru uses a grenade to get the beast all riled up, and she uses this moment to get in the perfect position to annihilate it. Kikuru calmly says that this is the last one as she slowly pulls the trigger, and this makes Hoshina smirk as she fires into the monster. Konami is stunned as she announces that the Hanju is defeated and the final stage of the exam is complete. Our boys are of course shocked as they didn't get to help, and Kafka declares that Kikuru is just too fast. Konami now just needs to bring back the drones and send medics for the injured. Hoshina is surprised that the exam ended so quickly, even though it took so much time to set up. Mina is impressed that Kikuru is even more powerful than they say, and Hoshina is shocked that Kikuru was even powerful enough to catch Mina's eye. It was expected that at least 30 people would drop out, but none did, and Hoshina is sure that it was because of Kikuru. This performance is to be expected though, of director Shinomiya's daughter. Hoshina is sure that she will be a big shot in the defense force, and a ray of hope for the entire country. Back at the exam, Kikuru just hopes that she was able to make her father proud by being perfect on the battlefield. Kikuru relaxes as she decides to go laugh at Kafka some more, but a strange being shockingly appears behind her and instantly causes massive damage. Just then, everyone is horrified as all the fallen kaiju start moving again. Kikuru was just barely able to protect her heart by focusing her entire shield on a single point, but she decides that she can still fight. She is stunned when the mysterious monster is able to talk, and it wonders how she can still move. Kikuru determines that it's a kaiju, but she is shocked to see that it's intelligent. Kikuru decides to attack it, but this monster instantly strikes her several times. Kikuru screams in agony, and Konami is shocked to see her vitals drop. They have no clue what's going on, but they are detecting life signals from the kaiju that were already eliminated. What's most shocking though is that the estimated fortitude of the revived Hanju is a 6.4. This is much more powerful than before, and Hoshina thinks about how an entire company is needed to take down a kaiju of that level. There are not many people capable of taking that thing down fast. Just then, Mina tells Konami to activate all remote shields for the examinees and send back some of the drones. Hoshina thinks about how luckily the two of them are some of the people capable enough to defeat this Hanju, so they head out. Examinees are instructed to evacuate, but Kikuru refuses. She thinks that a lot of people will lose their lives if she doesn't stop this thing herself. She uses the suit to stop the bleeding and determines that she can still fight. Just then, Kikuru thinks of her father's words when he told her to be perfect for their nation. Kikuru now demands perfection from herself, but she is easily knocked to the side by the Hanju. She can barely even move now, but she still refuses to lose. A look into the past shows that Kikuru was proud to receive the top grade in class. All the students around her of course didn't do as well, but their parents were at least there to celebrate with them. Kikuru tried to stay positive though, as her butler assured her that her father would be home that day and he would surely be pleased with her score. However, in reality, her father didn't care about her top score. He declared that rejoicing over a single success would only lead to failure next time. Instead of celebrating, he just wanted her to prepare for her next goal. This is when he told her that she needed to always be perfect for the sake of their nation's future and for the sake of her late mother as well. Her father's words still weigh on her till this day, so she fights back. He always told her to never stop moving forward and to never let anyone be better than her. So now she refuses to lose. Even with just one arm, as long as she can move, she will fight. Unfortunately for her, she has just suffered too much damage, and she must once again scream from the unbearable pain. Just then, one of the drones spots the Hanju, and Konami is shocked to see that its severed offensive uni organ has regenerated. Hoshina gets really worried as Konami determines that it's gathering energy for an attack. Hoshina and Mina are rushing to the site, but he is unsure if they will make it in time. The beast prepares this immense attack, and Kikuru comes to the conclusion that she is done for. She apologizes to her father for not being perfect and begins to cry. The Hanju prepares to release its attack, but Kikuru is shocked when Kafka appears to tell her that she did a great job. Kikuru is absolutely stunned as she can't understand why he is there, and the monster's attack strikes them. Of course, Kikuru is even more stunned when they are not harmed, and Kafka begins to transform. Kafka explains that she did a good job buying time for everyone to evacuate, so she can just leave the rest to him. Elsewhere, everyone evacuates frantically. Kaguragi uses flares though to organize the evacuation, which impresses Nozumo. A look back to just moments ago shows that Kafka and Ichikawa were told to evacuate. They were instructed not to go back as Kikuru was fighting the revived Hanju. Ichikawa was ready to evacuate, but Kafka had already disappeared. Ichikawa hoped that Kafka wasn't crazy enough to transform, since he was sure that he would be eliminated on the spot if he did. As Ichikawa rushes to the site, he realizes that Kafka definitely is crazy enough to transform, since he doesn't hesitate in these kinds of situations. Back with Kikuru, she's absolutely stunned by Kafka's transformation, and she can't understand how he could be a kaiju. Kafka shows that he's just his normal self, as he begs her not to tell the defense force. Just then, Kikuru is terrified, as the Hanju uses its immensely powerful attack again, but Kafka easily deflects it. Kafka promises to tell her everything in a moment, as he only needs 1 second to eliminate the beast. Just then, Konami detects a mysterious ultra-powerful energy source near the Hanju. The explosion knocked out their comms, so they have no visual. They do have a reading on its fortitude, but Konami refuses to believe that it's real. This mysterious beast supposedly has a fortitude of 9.8. Hoshina says that's impossible, and just assumes that the explosion must have scrambled the measurement system. It's impossible because if it were true, then this would be one of the most powerful kaiju in history. Kafka powers up like the insanely powerful beast he is. He apologizes to the Hanju as he is simply running out of time, and he must end things with one punch. Kikuru then watches in utter amazement as Kafka's punch meets the Hanju's punch, and the Hanju is blown to bits. Kikuru's shock is written all over her face, and the Hanju's body parts get scattered everywhere. Kafka is pleased with his work, and tells the monster to try to come back to life after his attack. The thing starts moving again though, so Kafka begs it to stop, as he was just joking. The monster really is defeated though, and Kikuru can only wonder just who this guy is. Kafka saves her from another attacking Yoju, and reveals his face. He assures her that she is safe now, but scolds her for putting herself in so much danger. Soon enough, Kafka's the one being scolded as Ichikawa arrives. Kafka explains that he was only planning to transform part of his body, but he had to change the plan when he saw the Hanju. Ichikawa still scolds him, but the argument ends when Kikuru passes out. Soon after, Mina and Hoshina arrive at the scene, but they can't imagine what could have caused this much damage to the Hanju. Just then, Konami reports that Kikuru, Ichikawa, and Kafka have made it out, which means that the evacuation is complete. Hoshina admits that Kikuru is incredibly strong, but there is no way she could have obliterated the Hanju like this. Mina points out that between the kaiju coming back to life and this blast area, there's a lot they don't understand. Mina then issues an order for an investigation unit to inspect the area, while she and Hoshina wipe out the remaining Yoju. Hoshina realizes that this blast is similar to what they saw 3 months ago, and he wonders if they are connected. Later, we see that Kafka is back in another hospital. Ichikawa explains that Kikuru is recovering as well, as they are using the Defense Force's best technology to treat her. Kafka reflects on the exam, which reminded him how difficult it is to compete against incredible people. It also reminded him that chasing your dreams means there's always someone out there who's beating you at the things you care about the most. Most importantly though, he remembered that you get so excited that you don't even care. Kafka is glad that he decided to take the exam again, and he thanks Ichikawa for encouraging him. Just then, Mina surprisingly appears, and simply thanks them for carrying Kikuru to the shelter. She leaves just as fast as she appeared, so Kafka almost calls out to her. He stops himself though, as it's not the right time, and he would rather wait to talk to her after he becomes an officer. He's more confident than ever that this will happen, and he makes a silent promise in his mind, telling her to just watch. Nearby, Kikuru has a nightmare about failing to be perfect for her father. She wakes up to wonder if her father has arrived, but it's just Hoshina. He explains that there were no casualties, and it was all thanks to her defeating the Hanju. Her shock from hearing this makes him wonder if she was not the one that defeated it. Kikuru remembers what Kafka said, so she declares that she was the one that eliminated the Hanju. That night, a news report explains what happened at the exam, and reveals that while many were injured, there were no fatalities. In some bathroom stall, we see that the mysterious and intelligent kaiju is listening. He's stunned and disappointed to hear that there were no fatalities at all. Just then, the phone rings, and the monster reminds himself about how to answer it. When he does, the voice on the other end tells him that he needs to get back to work. This monster transforms and puts his uniform on, and we shockingly see that he's a new member of Kafka's disposal unit. Everyone hopes that Kafka and Ichikawa are okay after the exam incident, and the new guy ominously hides his transformation. At the hospital, Ichikawa states that Kafka is starting to look like a man that everyone can depend on. However, when they go back to work, he takes it all back. Kafka is terrified, and he blames Ichikawa for encouraging him to take the exam again. Ichikawa points out that he was just thanking him for that at the hospital, and their argument is interrupted when they receive letters. The guys prepare to open them and agree to do so on the count of 3. After thinking about catching up to Mina, Kafka is shocked by his exam results. Later, we see that the students that passed the exam have gathered at the Defense Force base. The guys notice that Kikuru's groupie isn't there, but they aren't surprised by any of the results. The room goes silent as Kikuru enters the room, and we learn that she received the top score. Nezumo thought that he would rank first before the exam, but he guesses that they will just have to fight for second place now. Kaguragi doesn't think this way at all though, as he points out that he scored the highest on the fitness exam. He will let Nezumo aim for number 2, as he still plans to aim for number 1. Ihiro introduces himself to Ichikawa and wonders where the old guy is. He assumes that Kafka didn't pass, and Ichikawa just gets a worried look on his face. Just then, Mina arrives to begin the introduction ceremony, and Kikuru is chosen to speak on behalf of the incoming class. The 27 of them are now considered officers of the Defense Force, and Kikuru declares that they will lay down their lives for the cause. Kikuru is then shocked when Mina thanks her personally for saving everyone at the exam. Kikuru becomes really sad as she knows that Kafka is the one that should be hearing these words, and she wonders why he isn't there. He had the audacity to not only save her life, but to also worry about her like she was a little girl. She becomes enraged as it was completely humiliating, and she still wants answers to why he was able to become a kaiju. Just then, everyone is shocked as Kafka arrives late to the ceremony. It turns out that Kafka actually failed the exam. He scored the lowest on the fitness exam and received a 0 on his aptitude test. During a meeting over who would pass, Mina was about to say something about Kafka, but Hoshina interrupts and declares that he will take Kafka. Kafka's numbers say that he doesn't have what it takes to be an officer, but what he showed on the battlefield says otherwise. Kafka was able to locate the enemy's weak points, and he prioritized helping others over his own kill count. Most importantly though, Kafka really made him laugh. Hoshina isn't sure if Kafka will ever become a full officer, but he will bring him into his platoon as a cadet so he can receive more training. Mina now explains that he's enrolling as a cadet, so she had him skip the introduction ceremony. Kikuru is glad to hear it, and the top guys are too. Mina then gives a speech about how the kaiju are getting stronger, and she won't be able to guarantee the survival of the new officers. However, she vows to stand at the very front so she can act as both their shield and spear. Kafka gets really caught up in her speech and loudly declares that he will be standing next to her soon. Everyone is shocked as they call him crazy for calling the captain by her first name. For speaking out of turn, Mina tells him that he owes her 100 push-ups, but he thinks about how it was an accident. Hoshina laughs uncontrollably and points out that Kafka is already back at his funny ways. Mina leaves, but Hoshina wonders if he just saw her smile a little bit. Konami can't believe that Kafka's already bringing the comedy, but Hoshina explains that this place can get pretty gloomy and they need a guy like him. However, Hoshina secretly has another reason for keeping Kafka around. He noticed something strange when they detected the 9.8 fortified kaiju. Hoshina still believes that it was just a busted sensor, but what he noticed is that someone's vitals stopped coming in at the same time. This person was Kafka, so Hoshina thinks that there's something strange about him. He has decided to keep Kafka close so he can find out what that something is. Down below, everyone cheers on the old dude as he completes the 100 push-ups. Kikuru wants to speak with him, so the guys assume that she wants to confess her love. She denies that, so Kafka assumes that it's one of those meet me after school behind the gym kind of things. Kikuru denies that as well and just tells him to come with her. He does, and Kikuru is shocked when Kafka reveals that a kaiju forced itself into his mouth. Kafka wonders if he can just tell the Defense Force the truth, as they might be able to cure him. Kikuru is sure that it's a terrible idea, since if they don't eliminate him on the spot, they will surely make him spend the rest of his life being tested and having experiments done on him. Even worse, she has heard a rumor about what they do with kaijus powerful enough to get a number. After they are defeated, their body parts are used for a special weapon. Kikuru fears that this will happen to Kafka, so he begs her to keep his secret. She agrees to do so, but if he ever tries to harm humanity, she vows to end his life. Everyone gets very serious, but Kafka is actually counting on her to do that if things go bad. Later, everyone watches as Ichikawa performs a training exercise. He completes it in just over 2.5 minutes, and it is announced that his estimated unleashed combat power was 18%. Everyone gasps in amazement, and Hoshina is impressed by how much he has grown in such a short period of time. Ihiro can't believe that Ichikawa just set another personal best score, so he jumps into the exercise next. He goes real hard as he refuses to be outdone. Ihiro finishes in 2 minutes and 15 seconds with an unleashed combat power at 20%. Ihiro is really pleased with himself, and he tells Ichikawa to not get too cocky. Just then, everyone is absolutely stunned as Kikuru finishes in 1 minute and 15 seconds with an unleashed combat power at 55%. Kikuru taunts the boys as both their scores combined are still worse than hers, and Nizumo can't help but feel average around her. Kaguragi points out that he doesn't have time to worry about those better than him, as he now has the same combat power as him. Nizumo promises that he will set a new best when it's his turn, and all the powerful rivals stare at each other with great intensity. However, the intense moment is broken up when an exhausted Kafka finishes the exercise in 6 whole minutes and has a combat power of 1%. Kafka is actually really happy about this, as he has turned the 0% from before into a 1. Kafka demands that Kikuru praise him, but Hoshina points out that he will never become a full officer at this rate. In fact, he will probably be fired in just 3 months. Hoshina has them all run 10 laps and gives them an extra 5 for complaining about it. Konami can tell that there are a lot of rivals in this class, and Hoshina is glad that they're all pushing each other to become better. Afterwards, the guys are all exhausted, and Ihiro tries to argue with Ichikawa about who has bigger muscles. Kafka tells the kids to stop arguing, and shows them the muscles of a hardworking grown-up. Kafka can't hold his stomach in for long though, and Ihiro points out that he can't join the defense force with a spare tire like that one. Kafka tells them all that it will happen to them too after they turn 28, and demands that they arm wrestle him to see who is stronger. Just then, they're all put to shame when Kaguragi enters the room with his bulging muscles. In the laundry room, the girls in the class are shocked to find Mina. Kikuru admires how in shape she is, but she knows that that alone doesn't explain her amazing combat power. Kikuru would like to know what kind of training she has done, so Mina instructs her to stand next to her. Kikuru is shocked that Mina wants to show her right now, but she eagerly agrees to do it. Back at the bath, the guys discuss why they decided to join the defense force. Ihiro was saved by Captain Mina Ashiro, so he always wanted to be a hero like her. All the other guys share the same desire to become heroes because of her. Kafka is amazed about her inspiring so many people, and Ichikawa points out that she is their generation's superhero. They all want to know Kafka's reason, and they are shocked to learn that he was childhood friends with Mina. They are even more stunned to hear that they made a childhood promise, so Kafka tries to sneak away. The guys stop him though, and demand to hear the rest of his story. After the girls' bath, Kikuru wonders if something happened to the guys, as they don't look too good. It turns out that they were so caught up in conversation that they stayed in the bath too long. They were talking about Mina, so Kikuru just calls them stupid boys. The class would then go on to do even more training exercises. There were a lot of times of tension, but it's pretty clear that they were forming a bond together. They were doing practically everything together and growing stronger as a team. Kafka would one day fall behind during a run, but his buddy Ichikawa was there to help him keep going. One night, Kafka refuses to sleep as he knows that he must work twice as hard as everyone else. Hoshina surprises him and points out that sleep is pretty important too. Kafka refuses to let himself get tired, and Hoshina wonders if he's doing it all for Mina. Kafka can't believe that he knows about that, so Hoshina tells him that he should assume that every word he says in the dorm is being recorded. Kafka declares that he made a promise to fight by her side, but Hoshina points out that that could be interpreted as Kafka trying to steal his spot as Mina's vice captain. Kafka hesitates for a moment, but confidently declares that that is what he intends to do, and he will do his best to make it happen. Hoshina seems annoyed, but he allows Kafka to have 2 more hours for studying. Before he leaves though, Hoshina declares that he will not let Kafka have his spot next to Mina. Kafka thanks him anyway, but Hoshina warns him not to get too close to the other officers. This is because anything could happen at any time. Just then an alarm sounds and everyone wakes up. This is exactly what Hoshina was warning him about, and he tells Kafka to get ready for his first mission. Konami gives Mina a status report and informs her that the surrounding area is being evacuated. It is quite the ordeal as tons of people wait to board some buses. The defense force is working with another group that is currently constructing a command post nearby. As for the Hanju that appeared, it came from underground and has grown even larger. The appearance of the Hanju has been followed by the appearance of a large number of Yoju. Mina declares that she will handle the Hanju herself, and she picks a spot to snipe from. Mina wishes luck to everyone, and they head out. Hoshina declares that it's time to hunt some kaiju, and Ichikawa tries to wrap his mind around how this is their first mission. Kikuru stares at Kafka in disbelief about him being kaiju number 8. She very seriously hopes that he doesn't disappoint her, but of course he does, as he's almost about to throw up. Elsewhere, we get a terrifying look at the gigantic Hanju and the evacuation shelter. Kafka and the other members of the Hoshina platoon stand at the neutralization area, and Kafka gets his first look at the giant monster. Hoshina explains that Mina's unit will be handling that Hanju, but the problem is that it's creating a ton of Yoju. Their job will be to make sure that the Yoju don't escape from the neutralization area. They are new recruits, so it's natural that they are placed at the very rear of the fight, but this also means that they are the last line of defense. No one has any questions as they are all focused on the mission, so Hoshina gets ready to start it. He declares that no matter how good their scores are during training, that won't save a single life. It is now time for them to show what they can do on a real battlefield. All the guys show their camaraderie as they get hyped up, and Hoshina tells them to have fun out there. Civilian evacuation is complete, and Mina is 8 minutes away from her position. Kafka communicates with Ichikawa and declares that during this mission, he must prove that he can do the job. He thinks about how Hoshina told him that he wouldn't last 3 months the way he's going now, and Kafka fears that he might not get another chance to prove himself. Kafka's really nervous, but for some reason, he's also really excited. He doesn't know why, but Ichikawa thinks about how this is the job that Kafka always wanted. They both promise to make their first mission a success, and they are told that the first Yoju have arrived in their area. Everyone is ready, so they all heroically jump off the roof of the building. Kafka confidently declares that this mission will be a success, but he's the only one to climb down the side of the building slowly. Elsewhere, Mina arrives at her sniper point. Another group is instructed to lure the Hanju to another area, so they open fire on it. After several attacks, the giant thing begins to move, and Hoshina excitedly waits to see everyone prove themselves. The fight has begun, and Kafka is surprised, since it's nothing like the exam, because he's really calm for some reason. Kafka now feels like his suit is actually helping him, and he confidently unleashes his combat power. Unfortunately though, he just gets wrecked by a Yoju. His combat power is still just 1%, so Kikuru tells him that he's too far up front, and he should be at the rear. Some veterans are annoyed that they have to fight with the rookies, and they wish that they would just get out of their way and hide somewhere. The veterans then decide to be cautious and wait for the front lines to figure out what the Yoju's weak spots are, but they are shocked when Kikuru already starts taking out the monsters. She refuses to just sit around and wait, so instead she attacks anything that looks like it might be a weak spot. Kikuru takes out a bunch of Yoju, shocking the veterans, as this is not the kind of power that is usually seen from rookies. Kikuru blushes when Kafka tells her that she did a good job, but she gets annoyed when her suit detects an increase in her heart rate. Nearby, the rest of the group works together to take down a Yoju, but Ihiro is shocked when he sees that Ichikawa just took down a Yoju all by himself. Ichikawa explains that he switched out the burst rounds in his rifle for freeze rounds, so he could slow the Yoju down while he fights. This is a better fit for his style, and Ichikawa is confident that if he can get a hang of it, he will be even better at hunting kaiju. This isn't enough for him though, as Ichikawa thinks about how he needs to keep getting stronger, so Kafka won't ever have to transform again. The other top members of the group show just how skilled they are as well, as they eliminate several Yoju. The other platoons can't believe how strong the new recruits are, and not even the platoon leaders knew about it. Kagaragi and Nezumo compete to see who can eliminate more kaiju, and one of the platoon leaders activates Cougar mode as she drools over them. Hoshina informed her that the average unleashed combat power of the new recruits is higher than in most years. There are a few standouts at the top, and they are motivating the others to do better. Reports of Yoju being eliminated keep rolling in, and Kafka is shocked to hear that even Ichikawa and Ihiru are advancing forward. Kafka gets discouraged when he feels like he's holding everyone back when they're working so hard, and he wonders if there's anything he can do. Just then, Kafka remembers that the veterans wanted to wait till they found out what the Yoju's weak points are. Kafka takes a look at one of the Yoju's corpses and decides that he will fight in his own way. Just then, some of the others are shocked when they see Kafka messing with the corpse. Kafka is knee deep in this thing, and he realizes that even at just 1%, the suit makes it easy to dismantle a kaiju's body. It's so useful that he hopes that they could give some suits to the cleaning industry. Kafka recognizes the structure of the kaiju, but the core isn't where it normally is in a fungal type monster. Kafka looks around for it, and he is shocked when he finds it. He informs Hoshina that the Yoju's core is at the base of the neck, and Kafka even tells him the best way to attack it for those with weaker attack power. Most importantly though, Kafka has discovered that these Yoju have reproductive organs. It's the white bumpy things on their rear, and if they don't destroy them, then the corpses might spawn new kaiju. Hoshina is amazed by Kafka's work, and he tells Konami to spread the news. Hoshina commends Kafka once again, and Kafka is stunned about actually being able to help the defense force. Kafka rushes off to neutralize the bodies of the defeated kaiju, and he vows to do whatever it takes to stand by Mina's side. Just then he stops as a large explosion occurs, and Hoshina explains that the main attack on the Hanju has started. The Hanju has been lured to the destination, and the other platoons use suppressing fire to keep it in place. Mina then breaks out her giant weapon and makes the preparations to fire it. With everyone at a safe distance, Mina is given the clear to fire. Mina thinks about her competition with Kafka about becoming the cooler officer, and she prepares to show him how far she has gotten. The insane amount of power she unleashes causes her to destroy the ground beneath her feet, and her suit announces that Mina's unleashed combat power is at an incredible 96%. Hoshina watches her and hopes that Kafka is watching closely as well. Mina fires her weapon, and the insanely powerful attack absolutely destroys the gigantic Hanju. Hoshina wanted Kafka to watch so he could see the power of the person he's trying to stand beside. The Hanju's core is now exposed, so Mina loads another round into her weapon. She fires away, destroying even more of the Hanju, and Konami announces that its vitals have disappeared. The thing collapses, and Konami's a bit surprised when Mina loads a third round. Mina fires away again, and Konami announces that the Hanju has stopped moving completely. Everyone is amazed, but they're all shocked when Mina loads a fourth round into her weapon. Konami points out that the Hanju is already down, but Mina just demands that Konami give her the order to fire again. She does, so Mina once again shoots at the monster. Kafka watches in total admiration of her, and Hoshina arrives to wonder if Kafka is ready to give up on his goal. Standing by Mina's side means that he would have to match her incredible strength. Hoshina admits that not even he could do that. His combat power is not as good as hers when it comes to long-range weapons, so he can't take down the big boys like she can. The story is completely different, however, when it comes to small and mid-sized kaiju. Just then, Kafka gets worried when a kaiju appears behind Hoshina, but this just proves to be an opportunity for Hoshina to display the power he spoke of. With just the slightest movement, Hoshina slices the Yoju to pieces, and he declares that he thinks he's better than Mina when it comes to monsters of this size. Kafka couldn't see his attack at all, and Hoshina explains that his family has been a clan of kaiju hunters for generations. He goes on to say that a captain and vice captain are the force's most powerful members. That is why they are given special equipment tailored to their fighting styles. Mina informs Hoshina that the Hanju is down, so Hoshina tells Kafka that it's finally time for the real show to start. Kafka is confused since the Hanju is down already, so Hoshina reminds him that the real problem is the countless Yoju that still live inside its corpse. The unbelievable amount of Yoju begins swarming out, so Hoshina tells everyone that once they finish off the riffraff, they will be able to go home. The recruits think he's being a little too casual, so the veterans taunt them for giving up already. They are determined to show the new recruits that there's more to fighting than just combat power, so they head out to fight. The cougar named Nakonashima tells Kagaragi and Nozumo that they can just let the veterans take care of everything, but they rather fight. Konami analyzes the new recruits though, and sees that they are tired. Their unleashed combat power and endurance are both falling. Hoshina points out that it's a big mission, but if they can get through it, then it will push them to the next level. Most officers end their career with a combat power between 20 and 30%. However, a very small number of them overcome that wall and become captains. Kikuru is the only new recruit that has reached that level, but Hoshina thinks that there might be another one. This other person is Ichikawa. We then watch as Ichikawa eliminates another kaiju, and Ihiro becomes furious. He spent years training at a renowned technical college, so he can't understand why he isn't able to keep up with Ichikawa. Just then, they are told that more Yoju have been spotted nearby, so the two of them head to the front lines. Ichikawa is shocked when he sees the jacket of the monster sweeping company, and he wonders what one of the cleaners is doing there. They try to explain that the cleaners won't be needed for a while, but they just get ignored. The mysterious person is just disappointed as the reproductive organs he loaded the Yoju with have been destroyed. He wonders how they found out, and he speculates that somebody on the force knows all about kaiju. The guys are then shocked when this guy turns to them with his messed up face, and he wonders if they know anything about what happened. Nearby, the guys from the cleaning crew try to see if they can spot Kafka and Ichikawa. They're too far away, but what they can see is how gigantic the kaiju is. It's so big that every cleaning company in the nearby cities have been called to the scene. Just then, they notice that the new guy is missing. Back on the ground, Ichikawa tells the guy to get to safety, but he shockingly launches an attack that pierces right through Ihiru's chest. Ihiru is in a great deal of pain, but the guy's just disappointed that he missed the heart. It's pretty clear that their enemy is a kaiju, but Ichikawa has never heard of a humanoid kaiju other than Kafka. The monster turns into its kaiju form, and the guys realize that it's the one from the exam. What's even more terrifying is that it's the one that took down Kikaru. The monster doesn't want to leave empty-handed, so it has decided to take a sample of one of these Defense Force officers. Ichikawa tries to inform Hoshina of the humanoid kaiju, but the monster reveals that he already figured out how their communication devices work. He came up with a trick to keep himself hidden from the humans, so this entire area is undetectable. The monster's next attack does some serious damage to Ichikawa, but he's disappointed again because his aim is off for some reason. Ichikawa is shocked that the monster is blasting right through his suit's defenses, and the monster can tell that Ichikawa knows something. It turns out that Kikoro told the guys about this monster in case they ever ran into it. She explained that his attacks seemed to be coming out of nowhere, but if they focused hard enough on his fingers, they would be able to see him preparing for the attack. Ichikawa does just that, and he shocks Ihiru when he's able to dodge the monster's attacks. The monster figured this much, but he's surprised when Ichikawa fires back. Ichikawa tells Ihiru to go get help, but Ihiru refuses to let someone else protect him. Unfortunately, Ichikawa has to rescue him from another attack, and Ichikawa pleads for him to leave again. Ihiru realizes how bad the situation is as the monster approaches, so he runs away. Ichikawa admits to himself that he is scared because this monster defeated Kikaru. However, the Defense Force officer he wants to become always puts his life on the line to protect the people he cares about. Ichikawa begins his attack, and his only real goal is to buy enough time for Ihiru to get to safety. As Ihiru runs away, he can't believe how Ichikawa seems like a totally different guy. He can't understand how he's able to fight the monster, and he hates having to run away. A look back shows how everyone was told that they would hit a wall, unleashing their combat power. This usually happens at around 20 to 30%, and only very few people can scale that wall. Unfortunately for Ihiru, he has been stuck at 20% for 2 weeks. Ever since he was saved by Mina, Ihiru has only thought about becoming stronger, but he becomes frustrated since Ichikawa was able to surpass him already like it was nothing. Back at the fight, the monster can tell that Ichikawa knows a few things about him. The monster shows him something he is sure he doesn't know yet, and unleashes an attack, but this time Ichikawa is saved by Ihiru. Ihiru is still in really bad shape, so Ichikawa wonders why he came back. Ihiru thinks about how he realized that he doesn't hate Ichikawa. The person he hates is himself for not really changing at all since the day he was saved, and still being a person that needs to be saved. Ihiru declares that Ichikawa isn't saving him, he is saving Ichikawa. The monster is confused by their strange human interaction, but he soon realizes that one human was trying to help the other escape. He explains that their effort is useless because nothing can leave this space without his permission. This leaves them with no other choice, so Ihiru declares that they must fight together. Ihiru is in really bad shape, so he decides that he will give Ichikawa an opening so he can land a powerful attack. They begin their attack, and Ichikawa is shocked when Ihiru uses a conductor round. Ihiru declares that Ichikawa isn't the only one trying out different kinds of bullets, and the monster gets annoyed since the bullet makes it hard for him to move. The monster decides that he will have to take out Ihiru first, but Ihiru reminds himself that he was already hit by the monster's attack before. He focuses himself this time, and he's able to dodge the attack. The monster is shocked, and Ihiro hits him with another conductor round to get Ichikawa an opening. Ichikawa unleashes his maximum combat power and begins to power up. He begs for God to just this one time give him more power than Kikuro and Hoshina, and he fires away at the monster, splattering parts of it everywhere. The guys are shocked though when the smoke clears to reveal a wall of corpses. The monster emerges from the wall and declares that Ichikawa is done for. Ihiro screams out to him, but it's no use as the monster pierces Ichikawa's body with several attacks. Elsewhere, Hoshina is told that they have lost all contact with Ihiro and Ichikawa. Kafka becomes concerned, and someone notices that one of the corpses kinda moves. Kikuro arrives, and Kafka realizes that all signs are pointing to the monster from the exam being there. Back with the guys, Ihiro becomes really concerned for Ichikawa as he collapses. Ichikawa's entire body feels like it's burning, but he knows that he needs to get his suit to stop the bleeding. Ichikawa declares that he is still alive, so the battle is not over. The monster is disappointed to see that he can still move, and he explains that it's surprisingly hard to stop a human's motor functions without killing them. Ihiro tries to stop the monster from attacking again, but this just gets him attacked instead. The monster decides to put an end to the fight, so he tests out some attacks on Ichikawa. Ichikawa screams in agony, but he can still move, so the monster tries out attacking different spots on his body. Ichikawa screams even more, and Ihiro becomes furious. His comrade is being attacked right in front of him, and there's nothing he can do. Ihiro hates to admit it, but he acknowledges that Ichikawa is amazing. Ihiro is sure that he will become a captain one day, so he won't let Ichikawa's life end here. He heroically tries to shoot the monster again, but the weapon is damaged. The monster determines that he doesn't need Ihiro anymore, so he prepares to end his life. The situation is completely hopeless, so Ihiro pleads for God's help. It's actually so bad that Ihiro doesn't care who comes, and he would welcome help from a demon or even the devil himself. All he can do is plead for help now, and he wishes that someone would come save his friend. The monster declares that it's time for Ihiro to die, but Kafka appears out of nowhere and tells the monster that he will be the only one dying. Kafka sends the beast flying with a punch, and it doesn't even know what just happened. The monster can see its own body, and he realizes that his head was knocked off. Kafka rushes to Ichikawa and apologizes for being late. Ichikawa is disappointed in himself and realizes just how weak he is. He wanted nothing more than to prevent this from happening, but in the end he made Kafka transform again. Ihiro watches in shock as he can't believe that there's another humanoid kaiju. The monster sees this as well and realizes that Kafka is kaiju number 8. Kafka keeps a positive attitude as he tells Ichikawa that he needs to have his suit heal his wounds, and he has a good laugh because that's something he can't do himself. Ichikawa just wants Kafka to be careful, so Kafka just says to let him handle the monster. Ichikawa is still concerned though, as he has a bad feeling about this. The monster wonders why another kaiju is getting in his way, and he admits that kaiju number 8 is much stronger than he thought he would be. Because of this, he would like Kafka's corpse so he can use it. Just then, the monster sends a shot right through Kafka, and Ichikawa is shocked that it managed to hurt Kafka in his kaiju form. The monster realizes that it will take much more than that to eliminate Kafka, so he powers up a much more powerful attack. Ihiro is shocked when he realizes that the monster wasn't taking them seriously at all, and Ichikawa tells Kafka to run away. Kafka doesn't listen though, and just gets really angry when he realizes how much pain the monster was causing his friends. Everyone is shocked when Kafka's rage causes him to release a ton of power from just his voice, and he's able to deflect all the monster's attacks with a scream. Kafka then unleashes a barrage of attacks, and the monster prepares to protect himself with his wall of corpses. Kafka just breaks through the wall though, and the monster realizes that he can't take another direct hit. He desperately tries to protect himself, but he is shocked that Kafka's pushing him back. This is incredibly abnormal, and the damage he has taken is taking too long to repair. The monster becomes confused by Kafka's dominance, so he decides that he must retreat. Unfortunately, he quickly realizes that there's no time to retreat. Kafka mounts himself to the ground to brace himself for his next attack, and he points out that the monster's core is in its torso. He tells the monster to brace himself as he's about to punch a hole right through him. The monster realizes that it's in a really bad spot, and Kafka does as promised by unleashing an attack so powerful that it sends the monster across the city. The monster's practically falling apart now, and it realizes that its core is completely exposed. Kafka declares that this fight is over, but he's interrupted. Some members of the defense force arrive, and they announce to everyone that they have discovered a humanoid kaiju. Elsewhere, Kikuru fights and defeats another kaiju. She thinks about how Kafka told her that he was going to find Ichikawa and Ihiru. She didn't think he would be able to find them since all contact was lost with them, but Kafka assumed that they were with the monster. He's able to sense monsters nearby, so he left Kikuru to handle things while he was gone. Just then, Kikuru overhears that a humanoid kaiju has been discovered. It matches the description of kaiju number 8, so Hoshina sends a neutralization unit to its location, and Kikuru calls Kafka an idiot. Back with Kafka, the monster uses the tense moment to get away. He declares that he knows how kaiju number 8 works now, so he will kill him the next time they meet. The monster attacks the defense force officers, but Kafka protects them. The monster is surprised that Kafka behaves like a human, even though he's a kaiju, and he vows that they will meet again one day. Kafka refuses to be caught, so he launches himself into the air to get away. He's disappointed that the monster got away, but he's glad to have rescued his friends. Just when Kafka thinks he got away, he is shocked when he is found by Hoshina. Hoshina declares to everyone that he has made contact with kaiju number 8, and everyone is stunned. Hoshina is upset because he thinks that kaiju number 8 was the one that hurt his men. Ichikawa overhears this, and he wishes that he could tell Hoshina that kaiju number 8 is actually their comrade. He can't though, so Hoshina begins to attack Kafka. His attacks are incredibly dangerous, and they push Kafka back. Kafka realizes that Hoshina wasn't lying before, he really is good at fighting smaller kaiju. Hoshina can tell that kaiju number 8 is pretty strong because he survived his attacks, but Hoshina decides that it's time to stop messing around. Kafka has only seen Hoshina with a grin on his face, so he's taken aback when he sees what Hoshina looks like when he is eliminating kaiju. Hoshina's suit begins to pulse with power, and he requests permission to remove his limiter. Permission is granted, and his suit announces that his unleashed combat power is now at 92%. Hoshina gets into his attacking stance, and declares that he will be the one to neutralize kaiju number 8. Kafka isn't sure about what he should do, since he doesn't want to use his powerful fist attack against Hoshina. He doesn't have much time to think at all though, as Hoshina has begun his attack. Kafka realizes that he won't be able to survive if he holds back, especially because Hoshina is so quick that Kafka can't harden his body fast enough to protect himself. Hoshina is not as strong as the humanoid kaiju, but he's definitely faster. Kafka was amazed by Kikuru's speed, but Hoshina is clearly on another level. Hoshina lands a devastating attack, and Kafka wonders if Hoshina is using an attack that he can't see. Hoshina announces that he has located kaiju number 8's core, and Kafka heals himself. Hoshina doesn't move like a human, but Kafka reminds himself that he isn't a normal human either. The problem is that regenerating uses a lot of stamina, so he can't take any more hits. As Hoshina continues his attack, he thinks about how kaiju number 8 has a fortitude of at least an 8, and this would make him a Daikaiju. However, this fight is giving him a strange feeling. Hoshina decides to ignore that, and he powers up an attack. This double attack is too fast to dodge, and Kafka quickly realizes that it was just a decoy. It's really a triple attack, and Hoshina plunges his blade into Kafka. He is shocked though when his blade gets stuck, and Kafka blocked there because he knew that Hoshina would go for his core. Hoshina is terrified when Kafka prepares a punch, but he just manages to escape it. Hoshina is disappointed though when he sees that kaiju number 8 got away, and he reports that to everyone. Nearby, Kikuru thinks about how monstrous kaiju number 8 is, and she wonders if it's really okay for her to believe in him. However, she becomes really happy when Kafka returns to her. Kikuru denies being worried about him, and prepares to scold him, but she rushes to catch him when he begins to collapse. He apologizes for letting the kaiju that hurt her get away, but she blushes and says that she will eliminate it herself. Kafka heroically leaves to find Ichikawa, but Kikuru points out that there's nothing he can do for him. He will be fine anyway, since the defense force has started using kaiju regeneration in their technology. She finally scolds Kafka by pointing out that he needs to worry about himself. Everyone knows that he made contact with Hoshina, and they could easily find a clue that leads straight to him. Elsewhere, Mina says that she has never seen Hoshina so upset, and she takes a picture to remember it by. Mina is then shocked to hear that Hoshina considers kaiju number 8 to be so powerful that he would be classified as a Daikaiju. This would be the first one in 5 years, but kaiju number 8 has not caused any casualties. He doesn't attack people indiscriminately, which is why Hoshina felt so strange fighting him. Hoshina realized that Kaiju number 8 actually attacked his weapon instead of him, but he doesn't know why. Also, Kaiju number 8's movements made Hoshina feel like he was fighting a human rather than a kaiju. Mina instructs Hoshina to get some rest and declares that regardless of what kind of kaiju it is, it's their job to eliminate it. Just then, they are told that the humanoid kaiju that first attacked was the same one from the exam. The two captains are then horrified when it is revealed that when the kaiju was first found, it was in a human form. Elsewhere, we see the kaiju limping in the middle of a street. Some guy tells him to get out of the way, but he gets confused when he gets pointed at. The guy demands some answers, but this just gets him devoured by the kaiju. The monster listens to the radio as the news reports that he has been designated by the Defense Force as a long-term neutralization target. He has also been given the codename Kaiju number 9. Kaiju number 9 only cares about eliminating Kaiju number 8, but he must remain hidden until he gets used to his new human body. At the hospital, Kafka is glad to see Ichikawa wake up. Ichikawa is glad to see that Kafka's okay, but Kafka declares that that's his line. Ichikawa then thanks Kafka for saving him, but his two friends are horrified by these words. Ichikawa can't figure out why, but he is then shocked when he sees that Ihiro is right there. Ihiro wonders why he's thanking Kafka because Kaiju number 8 was the one that saved them. Kikuro cleans it all up by saying that Kafka found out about the reproductive organs on the kaiju. Ihiro falls for it and thanks Kafka for that too. He wonders why Kaiju number 8 saved him in the first place and thinks about how he was actually pretty cool. Ihiro wonders why Kafka is blushing, so Kikuro explains it away by pointing out how Kafka always has the same dumb look on his face. Later, a celebration is held for Ichikawa and Ihiro because they were just released from the hospital. Just then, Kafka is shocked when the very serious chef arrives with a 6th grade Japanese Wagyu beef. This is way over the top, but it's because Izumo organized the celebration. His family is even wealthier than Kikuru's because they own the company that makes the Defense Force suits. Hoshina makes a toast and tells them all that they did a great job on their first mission. It's pretty rare for them to all get a break at the same time, so he tells them to enjoy it. They do, and Ichikawa has never seen everyone so happy. Hoshina tells them not to speak so soon, as the real show hasn't even started yet. Just then, Ihiro and Kikuro start arguing about who is worse at showing off too much and not helping the team. Ichikawa tries to calm them down, but Izumo and Kaguragi start arguing too. Kafka joins in the chaos as he wonders if there's something wrong with the suits because he couldn't even defeat one kaiju alone. Arguments break out everywhere, but Hoshina can tell that Ichikawa has noticed something. Everyone is talking about the mission. They're discussing what they were lacking and how they can improve. This makes Ichikawa realize that it's not just him, everyone wants to get better. Just then, Kafka demands that he be respected as an elder, but Kaguragi explains that he only respects the strong. That's fine with Kafka, so they prepare to arm wrestle. The arguments get even more intense, but Konami says that this is practically a yearly tradition. Outside, we learn that Izumo hasn't seen the chef in a really long time. Something seems to have happened to Izumo's father, and Izumo hasn't seen him since a certain incident. Just then, Izumo notices that Kaguragi is right there, and he wonders if he heard what they were talking about. Kaguragi actually just needs to go to the bathroom, and Izumo realizes that he isn't the nosy type. Back at the party, Hoshina makes an announcement. Kafka saved a lot of people with his knowledge during the mission, so he's being promoted to full officer. Everyone is shocked, and Hoshina welcomes him to the Defense Force. Everyone celebrates with him, and they cheer him on, as they always believed that the old dude could do it. Kaguragi doesn't show it in his face, but he's glad to see everyone so happy. He declares that if he can prevent anyone from losing their lives, then he will do it. Izumo watches as well, and agrees with him. The next day, Mina officially tells Kafka that he's a full-fledged Defense Force officer. Kafka declares that he will give his all to the fight, but he is shocked when Mina says that he's a long way from being able to fight by her side. Kafka can't believe that she actually remembers their challenge, and he tells her to just wait. He didn't address her properly though, so he once again owes her 50 push-ups. Luckily for Kafka, she needs to go to a meeting where Kaiju number 8 and Kaiju number 9 will be discussed. Mina reveals that Hoshina was the one that recommended Kafka for full officer, and she hopes that Kafka will live up to his expectations. That night, Kafka's up late studying again. He calls it a night though because he doesn't want to get scolded by Hoshina again. Kafka notices that someone left the light on in the training room, but he's shocked when he sees Hoshina training so late at night. Hoshina moves at incredible speed, and Kafka realizes that Hoshina is doing mental imagery training. It's not just any kind of training though, because Hoshina is recreating the battle he had against Kaiju Kafka. Kafka's shock gets Hoshina's attention, so Hoshina explains that he's working out a strategy for Kaiju number 8. That way he can slice him in half with a single strike the next time he sees him. This of course terrifies Kafka, and Hoshina says that he could have sliced Kaiju number 8's head off if he just did one thing differently. If he used skill 6 instead of skill 5, he could have sliced Kaiju number 8 and his core into ribbons. Again, this of course horrifies Kafka. Hoshina declares that Kaiju number 8 cannot be handled by a normal officer. Kaiju number 9 is just as strong, so Hoshina has decided that he must be the one to take them both down. This amazes Kafka since Hoshina isn't just trying to keep civilians safe, he's also trying to keep his platoon's officers safe too. In his admiration, Kafka declares that he will do his best to help in the fight. Kafka was being dead serious, but Hoshina tells him not to get too cocky. He doesn't expect a guy with 1% power to be any help. Kafka says goodnight as he leaves, but he's surprised when Hoshina tells him that he can have 1% of his expectations. The two call it a night, but we see that a group of terrifying kaiju are in the sky. They're under the command of some powerful looking monster, and he instructs the kaiju to begin their descent. A while later, Hoshina thinks about how Kaiju number 8 moves like a human. Then there's Kaiju number 9, who could speak and disguise itself as a human. Hoshina's really concerned because something strange seems to be happening with the kaiju. Elsewhere, Kafka thinks about what Hoshina told him and determines that he can't let him down. Kafka heads to bed, but he's shocked to see fire raining down from the sky. An incredible amount of fireballs begin to destroy the base, and Kafka's teammates wake up to see the base in turmoil. Konami reveals to Hoshina that they're seeing dozens of kaiju inside the base. Kaiju are attacking them from the air, and each one of them have a fortitude over 6. What's most terrifying though, is that they're all Hanju. On the ground, one of these monsters terrorizes the base as it unleashes a powerful attack. Mina's away, so Hoshina declares that he will be giving the orders for now, and he tells all hands to prepare for combat. His instructions are to lure as many kaiju as possible into the training area, and to make sure that none of them get off the base. They aren't hearing any reports of damage outside the base, so Hoshina wonders if they're after the base itself. Kafka's horrified to see the base on fire, and he can instantly tell that the wyvern type kaiju are bad news. He stops however as he realizes that them being wyvern type means that something is not right. Elsewhere, Hoshina has all rifle users head to the center of the base, where they will lure the kaiju to shoot them. Just then, Kafka explains to Hoshina that only about a dozen or so wyvern type kaiju are seen each year. However, one thing has always been the same: they always appear alone. Hoshina determines that them arriving as a group this time means that something has the power to make them swallow their pride and the intelligence to act with a goal in mind. He predicts that they have a powerful leader. Just then, this leader appears before Hoshina. It says that its target has been spotted, so Hoshina tells Kafka that he's hanging up now. The leader demands to know if Hoshina is the strongest human at the base, but Hoshina is just shocked that it can talk. Mina isn't there, so Hoshina says that he is the strongest, so the leader decides that Hoshina is his prey. Just then, Konami reveals that this leader is a Daikaiju class with a fortitude of 8.3. Hoshina tells his second in command to handle the fight with the other kaiju so he can focus, but he must quickly dodge an attack from the Daikaiju. The monster is impressed, so he says that Hoshina passes, and he unleashes another powerful attack. Hoshina once again evades it, but this just pleases the Daikaiju even more. It determines that it's time to begin the annihilation, and its scream causes all the other kaiju to scream as well. Hoshina sees that they're reacting to his battle cry, which confirms that they're after the base. Just then, Hoshina must dodge another attack, and he points out how the monster's punches hit like a meteor strike. He knows that if he gets hit by it, he is a goner, so he continues to dodge its attacks. Hoshina manages to land an attack, but the beast's skin is even tougher than Kaiju number 8's. Elsewhere, the others have a hard time fighting the kaiju. They aren't able to do any damage, and they are shocked when Kafka tells them to stop attacking them from the front. They need to attack their backs. The wyvern types are easy to attack from the front when they're in flight, which is why they have thicker skin there. The skin on their back though is as thin as possible to keep their weight down, and the core is near the back as well. The others are impressed by Kafka's knowledge, so they change their formation to aim for the backs of the kaiju. Izumo and Kaguragi team up to fight one of these beasts, and Kaguragi acts as a decoy. Izumo releases his full combat power to fire an attack, but he must dodge quickly when another kaiju appears to attack him. This is really terrifying because the kaiju are working together and watching each other's backs. No one knows what to do, so they are shocked when they hear Kikuru say that there's another way. Just then, Kikuru appears out of nowhere running at blazing speed, and she attacks a kaiju. She shows off a new weapon and declares that her plan is simply to use her unstoppable power to smash right through their front armor. A look back shows that in the base's underground weapon storage, Kikuru was shocked to hear that a custom weapon was made especially for her. Normally you have to be a captain to receive one, but they decided to make an exception for Kikuru. Kaiju levels have been increasing, and Kikuru is the third most powerful officer on base, so they have decided to treat her as part of their main force. Mina declares that Kikuru is now officially the third strongest weapon after the captain and vice captain, so it's her job to annihilate the kaiju. Back to the present, Kikuru concedes that this weapon packs a powerful punch, but the only bad thing is that such an ugly weapon doesn't really suit her. Everyone is shocked to see the damage she was able to do, and she declares that this kaiju's life will now end. Kikuru dodges its attack and reveals that her weapon was made from a uni organ of a Hanju that was neutralized 2 years ago. Hoshina told her that if she pulls its trigger to turn on the power, it will release shockwaves. Kikuru uses it to accelerate her forward and uses her first technique to crush the kaiju. Another kaiju appears out of nowhere, so she uses another shockwave, but this time it's to deal massive damage. The guys watch in amazement, and they think that the weapon suits her perfectly. Another kaiju appears in the sky, but Kikuru is shocked when it is hit by some freeze rounds. It was Ichikawa, and Kikuru is impressed that he can fight like that against kaiju that are this strong. Ichikawa fires more rounds at the kaiju, and Kikuru finishes it off. Kikuru allows Ichikawa to have the honor of helping her, but only if he can keep up, and Ichikawa says that he can. Izumo and Kaguragi refuse to be left behind by the other pair, so they decide to hit the enemy from behind when Kikuru has them distracted. Hoshina is glad to hear that Kikuru is doing a good job, but he has a real problem on his hands with the leader. This thing's insane speed and power pushes Hoshina back, but what's most terrifying is that Hoshina can tell that the Dai Kaiju is enjoying the fight. This is an emotion that kaiju are not supposed to have. Hoshina makes his way through Gate 3, and he gets upset when the beast destroys it. Just then, he is shocked when the beast disappears. This terrifying monster explains that most kaiju can't fight him like Hoshina does, so it can't wait to eat Hoshina and get even stronger. The leader sends Hoshina flying, but it acknowledges how strong Hoshina is as he managed to slice his arm off. Just then, Hoshina apologizes to Konami as he has decided to skip procedure. Now that they're on the training grounds, he doesn't have to worry about hurting the officers, so he can go all out. Hoshina unleashes his 92% combat power and declares that it's time to neutralize this Dai Kaiju. Elsewhere, one girl finds herself in really bad trouble. Kafka's nearby, but he won't make it in time, so he transforms just his legs to rescue the girl. She is shocked to have been rescued by Kafka and assumes that he must have learned to use his suit. He just goes along with it, but the beast prepares to attack them. Luckily, they are saved by Kikuru and Ichikawa, so Kikuru tells them to get the injured to safety. Ichikawa then speaks directly to Kafka and tells him not to take any risks. He reminds Kafka that he's a full officer now, and he needs to believe in his fellow officers. Kafka understands, and he is amazed as he watches them fight. They work together to fight the kaiju, and Kafka can only wonder when they learn such amazing teamwork. Just then, Konami announces that other units have arrived to help. Kafka couldn't be happier since this means that the senior officers that were off duty have finally showed up. The platoons start forming a plan to work together, and things are starting to seem more hopeful. They're managing to push back even without Mina being there. Kafka goes to help the wounded and thinks about how amazing his 3rd division is. Nearby, Hoshina tells the leader that they picked a fight with the wrong people, and he is sure that they will win. The two begin fighting again, and the Dai Kaiju realizes something. Hoshina has been slicing right through the tiny gaps in his exoskeleton. He's disappointed though because this makes the fight no longer fun for him. Knowing what Hoshina's aiming for makes it easy for him to handle as he just closes off the openings. Just then, he is shocked as Hoshina still manages to slice him to pieces. The leader realizes now that Hoshina aiming for his gaps was just a diversion. Hoshina tears the leader to pieces, but is then the one to be shocked when the monster just gets more excited. This is the kind of fight he likes, and he just begins to regenerate. He's glad to be fighting someone that rivals his own power, but he's once again surprised when Hoshina slices him up enough to expose his core. Hoshina uses another Hoshina sword technique, and everyone celebrates as they assume that the fight is over. Just then, Konami notices something strange, and Hoshina yells that it's not over. Nearby, Kafka feels a great deal of pain, and he wonders why his detection ability is going off even though he hasn't transformed. Kafka fears the worst, and he worries about Hoshina. Konami's just as terrified, and Hoshina watches as the Dai Kaiju begins to transform into something much bigger. He realizes that the position of its core must have changed, so he wasn't able to fully destroy it. The Dai Kaiju releases ultra high temperature steam, so Hoshina is glad that he brought it into the training grounds. Just then, Konami announces that the Dai Kaiju's fortitude is rising, and she's in disbelief of the number. The beast finishes transforming, and she announces that its fortitude is now 9. Hoshina is horrified to see what it has become, and the Dai Kaiju releases a loud roar. Konami fears that Hoshina won't be able to handle the behemoth alone, as the thing towers over him. Kafka continues to feel a great deal of pain, and he can tell that Hoshina is in trouble. The giant attacks Hoshina, but he surprisingly manages to cut the beast. He cuts it several more times, causing the monster to scream, but it declares that Hoshina's speed won't be able to save him. Hoshina nearly manages to stab its eye, and Konami is amazed that he's still able to fight the beast after it transformed. Hoshina is moving at incredible speeds, but his blades aren't cutting all the way through, and that is why he hates giant kaiju. Hoshina decides that he will just have to use his speed to get to the monster's core on its back, but he stops out of nowhere. Hoshina coughs blood, and his suit tells him that he's overheating. It recommends that he cancel his maximum release immediately, and Konami points out that it's been 10 minutes since his maximum release. She pleads for him to shut it down, but Hoshina is busy dodging attacks. Hoshina figures that he only has about a minute left, but he's shocked to find that the flying kaiju are self-destructing to attack him. They're like terrifying living missiles, but Hoshina doesn't mind because they give him a smokescreen to hide from the giant. He uses this advantage to scale a building and manages to get behind the giant. Unfortunately, this thing has eyes on its back and it sends Hoshina flying through several buildings. Everyone fears for his life, and Hoshina's suit reaches its limit, cancelling his maximum release. It recommends that he seek medical attention immediately, and Konami calls out to him. A look into the past shows someone telling Hoshina that the era of blades has passed. If it were 100 years before, then Hoshina's talents with blades would have made him a genius. Other weapons were considered better at this point, so Hoshina was told to give up on joining the defense force. Konami continues to cry out to Hoshina, so he tells her not to worry. The giant kaiju hits like a truck, but Hoshina had his shield set to max. Hoshina no longer has his maximum release though, so he doesn't know what to do. He is concerned about everyone else, but he is told that they're beginning to turn the tide against the Yoju. Hoshina is glad to hear it, and decides that he will have to fight to the very end too. Konami begs him to stop, but it's too late. Hoshina dodges an attack and uses another technique to cut the beast, but it just regenerates. Hoshina ends up getting hit, and he thinks back to the past again. He was told that his unleashed combat power with guns is low, and that wouldn't do in the times they are in now. Even after making it into the defense force, he was told to quit. Giant kaiju were becoming more frequent, and it was believed that he wouldn't be able to stand against them with just his blades. Hoshina has been hearing the same things his entire life, but Mina was the only person to ever say something different. He was prepared for her to tell him to give up, but he was shocked when she asked him to join her force instead. The two of them are opposites because he's only good at fighting smaller kaiju, and she's really only good at fighting giant ones. Mina left him in charge of the base now, so he declares that he will protect it at all costs. Hoshina uses technique after technique and manages to do some serious damage. He eventually reaches his 6th technique, but everyone is horrified when the beast grabs him. Kafka arrives and is terrified to see Hoshina's life fading away. Kafka decides that he has no other choice, but Ichikawa is sure that if Kafka transforms now, there will be no way for him to escape. Ichikawa tries to stop Kafka, but Kafka has already decided that his comrades' lives are more important. Kafka begins transforming, but he stops as everyone is shocked to hear Mina's voice. Hoshina tells the giant that he wins this fight, and the giant gets hit by a major attack. Hoshina explains that he's the vice captain, and it's his job to set up their target for Mina. Mina announces that she will be skipping procedure, and she prepares to blow up the giant with her huge weapon. Her next shot takes a big chunk out of the beast, but Mina must avoid being hit by one of the flying kaiju. The giant is regenerating rapidly, so Hoshina tells Mina that its core is on its back. Kafka continues to make his way closer, and Hoshina realizes that defeating the beast isn't going to be that easy, even for Mina. He unleashes his combat power at 63% and uses some attacks to limit the monster's mobility. Hoshina wants to make it an easier target for Mina, but Konami is shocked that he can still fight because his suit is already past its limit. His attacks end up being nullified by the monster's regeneration, so Hoshina realizes that his power output isn't enough. He has no clue what to do, but he is stunned when Kikuru comes out of nowhere. She uses her massive axe, but finds that she isn't strong enough to even scratch it yet. Kikuru is surprised though when Hoshina tells her to keep going. He will cut open the monster's shell, so he wants her to chop into the wounds. The two do just that, and Kikuru is stunned when the plan works. Kikuru is now the one overheating though, but that's okay because she did well to help make the monster less mobile. This allows Mina to land another attack, and now the monster's core is exposed. Mina only has one bullet left, and everyone arrives to give her some support. They protect her, and Hoshina instructs some of the others to attack the monster non-stop so it can't regenerate. The battle intensifies, and Hoshina pushes himself more and more so he can keep striking the beast. Hoshina's body can barely keep going, but he's determined to slice open a path. He refuses to give up because he knows that this is the only way he can leave his mark. Just then, the monster's nearly about to eat him, but Mina thanks him for a job well done, and she declares that she was right to make Hoshina her vice captain. Mina's unleashed combat power goes to 96%, and she prepares to fire her most powerful attack. Hoshina tells the giant that he picked the wrong people to mess with, and Mina's attack blows the monster to pieces. Konami announces that the Hanju is down, and everyone celebrates. Hoshina helps Kikuru up, and Kafka admires his captain Mina. He gets really emotional as he declares that this is the defense force that he wanted to be in since he was a kid. The captains are amazing, and Kafka hopes to stand by their side one day. Ichikawa tells him that his face is a mess, but Kafka says that he's just a bit emotional. Ichikawa points out that they're just getting started themselves, and the two agree to do their best. Hoshina wants to handle the rest of the Yoju, but Mina tells him that he needs to get some rest. Mina is told that she needs to rest as well because she only has 1% left in her suit before it overheats. Just then, Mina's tiger senses something, and everyone is shocked when they see something terrifying in the sky. It quickly becomes clear that this is why the giant did its battle cry, and Konami announces that the thing's power level is rising. The monsters are diving into the thing and creating a giant Yoju bomb. Its damage will be equivalent to a nuclear bomb, and Hoshina must tell the others not to shoot at it. Mina wants everyone to evacuate, but Hoshina can tell that there's no time. The giant calls out to Hoshina and points out that their fight will actually end in a draw. Just then, someone rushes towards the bomb, and Ichikawa begs Kafka not to do what he's planning. Hoshina tries to stop him as well, and explains that there's nothing Kafka can do. Hoshina stops, however, and is shocked to see how fast Kafka is moving. He's moving at an insane speed, and this is not what 1% unleashed combat power looks like. Everyone is then in absolute disbelief when Kafka transforms right in front of them, and Konami announces that they are detecting a gigantic signal. It has a fortitude of 9.8, and she explains that this creature is Kaiju number 8. Hoshina's mouth nearly hits the floor from shock, and he thinks about how he knew that something wasn't right. He was always suspicious of Kafka, but he liked him too much and turned a blind eye to his suspicions. The transformed Kafka apologizes to Hoshina in his mind for lying to him, and to Kikuru because she did such a good job keeping his secret. He says sorry to Ichikawa as well because he won't be able to keep his promise. Kafka then thinks about Mina, and he prepares to do something crazy. Ichikawa tries to stop him, but it's no use. Kafka thinks about how everyone has been risking their lives, so he has decided that he can't be the only one putting his own safety first. Kafka launches himself into the sky and declares that he's part of the defense force too. Now it's his turn to protect everyone else, so he uses one of his powerful punches to hit the giant bomb. This sends the bomb really high into the sky, and Kafka crashes down to Earth. Mina tells everyone to use their max shields, and the bomb in the sky causes a massive explosion. Even though it's miles in the sky, the explosion's shockwaves still cause some serious damage on the ground. Kafka stands strong during the explosion though, so he can protect his comrades. Everything begins to settle down, and Kafka realizes that he's really done it this time. His arms and legs are barely holding together, and Kafka declares that he's too old to be pulling stunts like what he just did. Just then, Mina calls out to Kafka, but she corrects herself and calls him Kaiju number 8. She raises her gun to him and tells Kaiju number 8 that she is taking him into custody. Sometime later, the Defense Force higher-ups discuss what they should do about Kaiju number 8. They are shocked that a Dai Kaiju was able to hide inside their forces and decide that they should hide this from the media. There is a rumor that one country is experimenting with Kaiju to human tissue transplants, and they might try something if they found out about Kaiju number 8. Some members suggest that they dispose of Kaiju number 8 and make weapons out of its corpse, but others argue that they should try to use him as a living weapon. Director General Shinomiya, however, says that they will decide after bringing Kaiju number 8 in and seeing it for themselves. To do this, he plans on ordering the 3rd Division to hand over Kaiju number 8. Elsewhere at some containment facility, we see that Kafka is restrained and being monitored closely. Kafka has been there for a day already, and he remembers what Kikaru told him about the Defense Force using Kaiju bodies to make weapons. Kafka is furious with himself because he was so close to being able to stand by Mina's side. He is sure that Mina is mad at him, and he's shocked when she arrives to transport him to headquarters. Kafka tries to apologize to her, but Hoshina silences him. As he is transported, Kafka realizes that he can't blame them for treating him like this because he kept such a crazy secret from them. Kafka is taken outside, and we see that everyone from the 3rd Division is there. Kafka can't even look Ichikawa in the eyes though, because he is sure that Ichikawa is mad at him. Ichikawa tried so hard to look out for him, so Kafka hopes that he will forgive him. As Kafka boards the transport, he realizes that everything is really over. However, Ichikawa shockingly steps forward and declares that he has faith that Kafka will return. What's even more surprising though is that Mina seems really calm, and she tells Kafka that there are no cameras in the room. She was of course shocked to see Kafka as a kaiju when he rushed in to save everyone, but she also thought about how that's just like him. Mina then reveals that they are putting together a case to defend Kafka. They hope to prove that he's still human so that they can save him. Kafka is then shocked when she explains that not a single person in the 3rd Division thinks of him as an enemy. Mina begins to read him his rights, but Kafka just wants to know if he can still try to stand by her side. Mina calmly says yes, and declares that she will always be waiting for him. Kafka gets really emotional, and the transport leaves. Hoshina calls him a fool, and has everyone in the 3rd Division salute as he leaves. Some old guy wonders what Hoshina thinks he's doing, but Hoshina cleverly says that he's just saluting Captain Mina. At headquarters, Kafka is sealed away behind several barriers. Several days later, we see that the other members of Kafka's platoon are really upset. Ihiro tries to keep everyone's spirits up by joking that Kafka's the only kaiju with a beer belly, but Ishikawa doesn't even crack a smile. Some members sadly share stories about Kafka saving their lives, but Kaguragi points out that they don't make the decisions. The Neutralization Bureau will be the ones deciding Kafka's fate. A human turning into a kaiju is a really big deal, and if it gets out, then it will lead to a worldwide panic. People would have to live their lives wondering if the person standing next to them is a kaiju. This is a terrifying thought, so the group realizes that it's too much for them to get involved with. Elsewhere, Mina asks Konami to do something for her. Konami is shocked to see what she's asking for, but she assures Mina that she can handle it. Hoshina is asked what he thinks will happen to Kafka, and he simply says that he will need Kafka back with him. When he was fighting Kafka, Hoshina could tell that he wasn't using his full strength. This really upsets him, so Hoshina declares that next time, they will fight for real. Elsewhere, Kikaru goes to see the Director General, who is her father, and she formally requests that Kafka not be eliminated. She reveals that he saved her life, but the director doesn't want to hear about her failures. He then shows her x-rays of Kafka's chest, and they reveal that while he made it look like a heart, Kafka actually has a core. Kikaru is shocked, and the director declares that Kafka is no human. He is a kaiju, just like the one that eliminated Kikaru's mother. Kikaru is horrified to hear this, and the director just tells his daughter to leave. Kikaru gets ready to leave, but first she declares that she still wants to believe in Kafka. In his cell, Kafka gets ready for another physical exam, but just wishes he could get a nice bed to sleep in. He thinks about how he has so much to tell his friends, and decides that he can't give up no matter what. Back with the others, Mina tells them that they will temporarily be split up and sent to other divisions. Their base has been destroyed, and it's no longer suitable as a place to train new recruits. The higher-ups are concerned about all the Daikaiju appearing because they feel that this may be a chain of connected incidents. There is a possibility that more will appear, so Mina tells the guys that they must be ready because they are the key to stopping the Daikaiju. Mina reveals that that is why they will be taking the top rookies and training them across division boundaries. Izumo's quite the critical thinker though, as he assumes that the higher-ups are actually just splitting up everyone who is close to Kafka so they can be monitored. Ihiro refuses to take part if that's the case, but Mina assures them that this plan has been under consideration for some time. The guys are relieved, but they are still hesitant to leave the 3rd division because they like it so much. They are shocked though when Ichikawa agrees to leave without hesitation. Afterwards, Izumo overhears Kaguragi saying that there's someone that he has to save. He was talking to his old commander, and he was asking to be introduced to anyone that might be able to help Kafka. Kaguragi isn't the type to ask for favors, but he reminds Izumo that he said he didn't want to lose anyone. Kafka is one of them, and he refuses to abandon him. Back with Kafka, he thinks about what Mina said and vows to prove that he is human so he can go back to everyone. Just then, Shinomiya arrives, and everyone is shocked that he went into the cell personally. Kafka desperately tries to tell him that he's not a kaiju, and everyone is stunned when Shinomiya instructs the operators to release the bindings that are restricting him. The horrified operators remind Shinomiya that Kafka is the very dangerous kaiju number 8, but this just infuriates Shinomiya. He points out that a Daikaiju could break the restraints like they were nothing, and Kafka just sitting there because he wants to. The restraints are released, so Kafka figures that the director will listen to him. Kafka begins to explain that he is human, but Shinomiya shockingly just starts shooting at him. Kafka wonders what he's doing, but there's no time for questions as Shinomiya crushes his ribs. Shinomiya makes things very clear by explaining that a creature that can stop bullets with its bare skin can never be considered a human. He calls him Kaiju number 8 as he takes a sample of Kafka's blood, but Kafka declares that he's not a kaiju. He explains that he's Kafka Hibino, but Shinomiya gives a signal to the operators. Just then, 2 cases are brought in, and they contain 2 gloves. Shinomiya puts them on as the operators announce that Kaiju number 2's cell synchronization is clear and activation is complete. Shinomiya powers up and declares that it's time to commence the disposal of Kaiju number 8. Kafka refuses to transform completely because he needs to prove that he's human, so he only transforms his arm. However, Shinomiya's fearsome attack rips Kafka's arm off and he takes some serious damage. Kikaru is worried about Kafka, but the other directors are pleased to see that Shinomiya still has it. He's the man that was once called the strongest soldier that the defense force had ever seen. The smoke clears to reveal that Kafka is still alive, and Shinomiya points out that he looks a lot more like a kaiju now. Kafka then runs for his life as the terrifying director shows his incredible power, and Kafka realizes that he can't take a hit from this guy. His plan is to just keep dodging until Shinomiya's suit overheats. This proves to be very difficult though, as Shinomiya continues his onslaught. Shinomiya eventually lands an immense attack that crushes Kafka into the ceiling, and Kafka can't understand why his body is reacting this way. It's the same as when he fought the Daikaiju. Kafka is confused by this because there are no Daikaiju around, but he's then horrified when he realizes what's going on. Another director explains that several years ago, the country was nearly destroyed by Kaiju number 2. It was only the second kaiju to ever be given a number. It had incredible power, and Shinomiya's suit and arm were made from Kaiju number 2. What's even more incredible is that Shinomiya is the only person that has ever been able to use them. Shinomiya is dealing some serious damage, so Kafka can't take any more. He tries to escape, but he's shocked to find that Shinomiya has removed his legs somehow. Kikaru screams out to Kafka as Shinomiya lands a devastating blow, but everyone is shocked when Kafka finally transforms completely. Shinomiya is glad that the kaiju has finally shown his true self, and Kikuru can tell that something is wrong. Kafka hasn't said a single word, and instead he lets out a monstrous roar. This shatters everything in the surrounding area, and Kikuru is sure that something is not right. Deep down inside Kafka, we see that he can no longer control his body. He's horrified to see that he's transforming into more of a monster, and the kaiju that entered his body keeps telling him to eliminate everyone. Kafka's body rushes to attack Shinomiya, and Kikuru calls out to Kafka. Thanks for watching my recap. Subscribe to the channel to help us make the push to 700,000 subscribers.